Zoom talk. I think everything's in place. Good. So now this morning, welcome to all of you who are here live and those who are joining later on YouTube. Then a very warm welcome. Good morning and or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And this is the third and the last of this session of this short course on generosity as bodhisattvas envisage generosity. So it's very much part of our Mahayana Bodhisattva teachings, and as always we should approach it with the best and the purest of minds. And I think we finished the last session talking about that, and it will carry on today. How do we make it the biggest and the best and the purest? But anyway, we start turning our hearts in loving care to all of our fellow beings, thinking we are here, giving our time, giving our attention, our awareness to these wonderful teachings of the Buddha, so beautifully preserved in our Kagyu lineage. And so we express our care through the prayers we do. Sonje chodam soji chonam la chancho pado dane chapsanchi dagi jinso jipe sonam ji rola penchara sonje drupara sho. Semchen tomche dewa dang dewe jodang dem para joche. Dongal dang dukmal ji jodang tralwara joche. Dongal mepe dewa tampa dang men tralwara joche. Ngeren jadan ne tan tralwe tan yom chempola ne para joche. Deyata shame shamavate shameta shatru Am kore marajite karota ke yorite jovate ollo yane beshuda Nimale malapa Naye kukure kaka grasana umuke paramuke Amuki shamedawane sawa graha bandhanane gnigritva sawa bhara pravadina vimukta marapasha savitva buddha mudra anudgatita sava mare putsarita bhari shuddhi bigashantu sava marakaman. Palen sawe lama rinpoche, dagi chiwara pende tenshula, kadren chempo gone, jizongte, kuson tuji nadrup sangdum sol. I can see a message asking for the password. Somebody trying to get in. The passcode is 377191. 377191, if you're helping somebody to get in. So, gradually we've been working our exploration of this topic of generosity, thinking, as we just heard when we were chatting together, thinking about what do we own, what don't we own, thinking about material generosity and generosity in general, what it means. It's not just the act of transference, it's to do with our mind, our motivation. And then we saw that there is in Buddhism the paramita of generosity, the perfection of generosity, but that's defined differently. in the different schools of Buddhism. And what we've been looking through are the basic nuts and bolts of generosity. What are good things to give, inappropriate things to give, who to give them to, when to give them, and so on. To see what wrong giving and right giving is, and then in the right giving, we want to make the right giving the best giving. So last time we saw that we can give not just material things, but that we can give of ourselves, give our time, give our support, and also give the gift of Dharma. Now, before I carry on this sort of chain of thinking where we're just working up from a worldly idea of being generous to trying to understand what a bodhisattva's generosity is, I think it was useful last time talking or sharing some of the advice that I've received, mainly from Akon Rinpoche, but from other teachers, about generally when we practice generosity, how we need to get rid of expectation. In the definition Gampopa gives, he talks about giving with the right mind and giving without any expectation of return. So if you remember last time, I talked about the transactional nature of worldly giving, where there's this invisible account book where you owe me, I owe you, I've given you more than you've given me, and then it can get very complicated when it comes to what we were talking about before the session started, like inheritance. Sometimes people have given their time to look after their parents, and then parents have given money, or other people have given money. It can cause so much friction between brothers and sisters and inheritors in general. Yeah, I'm having funny thoughts about the UK legal system and how you can give it all to a cat, and how cats are not going to fight somebody else and take them to court. But anyway, forget all of that. Forget all of that. Let's keep it simple. That when we are practicing Buddhist generosity, of whichever level of Buddhism, whichever school of Buddhism, then the main thing we are practicing generosity for is to free our mind. It's what the whole Buddhist path is about: freedom. Liberating what causes pain, what causes restriction, what causes harm to ourselves in the first place, and then because we are harmed by having a mind which is greedy, selfish, afraid, or whatever it is, jealous, competitive, we stop damaging ourselves by cultivating those elements in our mind, and then through doing that, we have a better mind, we can benefit others. We don't have a harmful mind, which in the past caused us to harm others. We want freedom of our mind from all of this transactional relationship we have with other beings. We just forget it. And it's why the teachings can seem over the top at times. You just give. Full stop. You just give as long as that giving is benefiting your mind profoundly. So we have to learn how to handle that. So there is the thing of no expectation. Keep that from this course. You'll forget many things, but if you take away something as a mantra, no expectation is what should be deeply engraved in our mind. And then no transaction. And then I wanted to add another thing, which is not directly related to the giving-receiving part of life. But in another way, it is quite central. It's about our own mentality, and it is a sense of entitlement. And this goes deep, deep, deep. It's our Buddhist practice, our practice of generosity is primarily there to get rid of what we generally call ego. Ego, the delusions about ourselves that cover up the real self, which is our Buddha mind, our Bodhisattva nature, covered up by delusions, harmful delusions that we group together under the title ego, that generate the mind poisons. Why are we jealous? Why are we angry? Why are we greedy? Why are brothers and sisters angry at each other over inheritance or potential inheritance and so on? Why are those harmful, poisonous, negative emotions there? It's because we have a certain sense of self, a certain definition of self. We define ourselves in a certain way. And in there is a sense of entitlement. I'd say there's almost I see it like walls, surrounding walls. Or there is an area. If you're in that area, you're okay. You feel I'm entitled to this. It can go up and down a little bit. You can be a bit richer, a bit poorer. You can have more friends or less friends. But there is the feeling of, yeah, this is me. But then if you go outside those barriers, those walls, those limits, that definition, then it's sad because you've lost. It feels unfair because life isn't how it was before. We can talk of this in terms of material life. We can talk about it in terms of like health. You know, the barriers with health is for many people, I'm healthy. Within that, you can catch a cold, so you can be in bed for a week, but it's just a cold and you're going to get better afterwards. Or you can, be a little bit, you're getting on, and you're getting on, so now you're 60, 70, you've got a bit of arthritis, but that's what you get. So you're kind of within the walls of what you expect. What you expect. And if you say a sense of entitlement, it doesn't sound nice. If I said to each of you, one by one, your trouble is you've got a sense of entitlement, you'll feel offended because it doesn't sound nice. But if I say, I'd like you to write me a one-page essay of what you expect of life just now, that would sound reasonable. So your expectations, I'm using the nasty title, so your sense of entitlement. And so generosity is linked to that in a way. And our Bodhisattva generosity can be surprisingly linked to that. I can't remember if I've told it already in this course, but there's a story of Buddha being given a very beautiful, very, very, very valuable gem. I think I told it in the first session. Yeah. But anyway, and then people were wondering what he was going to do with it. And he gave it to actually a rich person. And people were shocked. And some people were quite critical. It's like these days with the media, people are looking to see who's doing what with their wealth and so on. And now Prince Charles is giving money to King Charles, is giving money to this or to that. We're very aware of these things. So anyway, this expectation, when we look, it is rooted in karma, and how our own particular karma has temporarily, that's the problem, temporarily put us in a place where you have maybe a partner, maybe you have a friend, maybe you have material comfort, maybe you have access to Buddhist teachings, and you can go to Dharma centers, you can travel to India. We get used to it. Maybe it's been like that all of our life, or maybe in the last 10, 20 years. It's amazing how quickly we define ourselves. I have friends, nice people, but they'll usually fly first class if they can. It's normal. It's normal. And if no first class, then business. Well, slum it a little bit, fly business class. Other people who dream of business class, because I've got many friends who've gone backwards and forwards to India, don't have much money. So you spend the whole night in this tight little seat like this, doing yoga postures you'd never thought possible, just so that you can get a few minutes sleep here and there. What is normal, what feels normal, is just in the vast impermanence, what's normal today. So when our brilliant teachers like Taisitupa say, Bodhisattva needs to be prepared to be a prince today and a pauper tomorrow. That is so deep, because it means that we really, really and truly understand impermanence and interdependence, and that our karma is our karma. And we don't know what it's going to bring tomorrow. We have no idea. It could bring wonders, it could bring disasters, and it does all of those things. So anyway, I wanted to mention this more as a topic for you to explore, because in your own practice of generosity, it will be very helpful for you to explore your sense of entitlement, your expectations of life, because then you will understand what being generous will mean in terms of our key target, which is binning, ditching, getting rid of ego and all the trouble it causes. There's a very good book by Mingyur Rinpoche. It's called Joyful Living. Just the title made me think of joyful giving. Bodhisattva generosity is joyful. You're happy to give because you are letting go of something which has been causing you trouble for thousands of lifetimes. It's wonderful. It's wonderfully painful. Because if even there's this idea of letting go, being generous, it means there's something that's challenged. This sense of entitlement, this sense of what you deserve, what's normal for you. Why is it normal for you? You've got 1,000 times more than somebody on the street, and they've got 1,000 times more than somebody else. It's your karma. But we've got used to it. That getting used to is what Buddhist practice will challenge. So let's explore some of these things today. Now, last week we started looking really at Mahayana generosity. We define our Mahayana, our Bodhisattva journey, in terms of what we call twofold benefit. So it's called the twofold benefit. We need to keep them both in mind. Twofold benefit for oneself, benefit for others. So our generosity needs to be benefiting ourselves and benefiting others. benefiting ourselves by liberating our mind, taking us through all what we need to get enlightened, opening up the 6 paramitas, accumulating goodness. It's called the accumulation of virtue, punya, and accumulating wisdom through our giving. We are giving of ourselves, we are giving up, we are offering, we are letting go our fear, our tightness in relationship to our time, our possessions, and so on. We are doing that to free our mind, overcome all these habits that have kept us in limited states of mind, limited incarnation. Now, one thing that I can't describe is too big, but I need to lob the idea into your mind to explore, is what is a bodhisattva? Person seeking this twofold benefit. Many people confound the word bodhisattva with the idea of a good person. So a bodhisattva has to be a good person, but not every good person is a bodhisattva. It's wonderful that there are good people all over the world of many faiths and none. Good, kind, and in the worldly sense, generous people. But they are not bodhisattvas. Bodhisattva is very clearly defined. In order to help everybody, I'm getting enlightened. Not in order to help everybody, I'm giving them money. Not in order to help others, I'm giving my time and my presence. The key thing is I'm getting enlightened. Because when we study bodhisattvas, we think, who in the whole of human history has benefited the world the most? Our conclusion is Buddha. Billions of people benefited by what? By the Buddha finding a perfect, pure mind that we all have inside, and then teaching from that place, about that place, and giving us the methods to get to that place of timeless purity. Always been. It's our next course, Buddha nature. A bodhisattva is somebody whose whole focus is this purity, this natural state of mind. I'm going to achieve that, and that will help everybody the most. Why it's too big for me to explain is because I have a lot of experience that I try and share with you. I've traveled a lot to many Dharma centers. I've been in touch, and quite close touch, with hundreds, thousands of people practicing Dharma. And sometimes the idea of being a bodhisattva becomes an excuse for not going deeper into the meditation that will make you Buddha to be able to help everybody the most. People. So this might not happen at first. This is the reason I'm telling it to you. But inevitably, I hope, you will grow and mature and shine and blossom through your kindness and your growing care and awareness of other beings, and awareness of suffering and all of these things, and you will want to help people, and you will be equipped in a certain way to help people. But that can become a huge distraction. It's not a bad distraction, but when we look at the Bodhisattva path, we can say you can take the long path, or a shorter path, or a very, very short path. But then on the long path, there can be detours, so it makes it even longer. And then maybe not so much a path where you're always getting closer to where you want to go, but you kind of lose something, and then maybe it takes a few months or a few years, a few lifetimes to get back to where you were, because our main Bodhisattva journey is about our state of mind. Lives will come and go. People will come and go. So if this state of mind, what are we doing? We are letting it become what it naturally is, Buddha nature. Perfect generosity is in there. In order to do that, we have to shed the habits of ego. So if our kind activity to help others is keeping ego alive, or worse, it's making our ego stronger, something's wrong. We are not bodhisattvas. Now, on the outside, we might look like very, very kind human beings, given to others, doing lots of whatever we do that helps others. But the whole point is this mind of ours. Is it more ego-centered or less? Or sometimes, could it be shedding ego by moving forward in meditation practice, in awareness practice, everything that comes through Dharma, but it's being held back, held in a certain place because of this need to be. So Gampopa addresses this. He addresses this when he talks about our Guru's teachings on the Bodhisattva path. He says, what are they? What do gurus, what do masters teach people? He says they teach 4 areas, and these are the remedies to 4 things which in past lives have stopped us, blocked us, held us back on the path. Because he said, you might be wondering, these Buddhist teachers, they tell you, you've had not just hundreds, but thousands, or not even thousands, tens of thousands of lives. You've been everything, okay? Sounds a bit much, but okay, I believe you. You look like you know what you're talking about, Mr. Buddha. And then some of those have been precious human lives. And you've met Dharma teachers, you've received the Dharma teachings. But they're not just once, not just twice, hundreds of times. So the point, you might be wondering, well, I should have got enlightened a long time ago. If I've had that many precious human existences and met all these wonderful teachers, what went wrong? What went wrong? So Gampopa gives us 4 things that went wrong. How we blew it in the past. How we had wonderful opportunities and then it didn't work. Or it worked, but it kind of slowed down, went into reverse mode, or we got satisfied with a little bit. So only 4 things. One is we were too attached to the life we were in. the people, the things, the body, the circumstances, very involved, and we prioritized those things. Involvement with this life, it's called. The second one is involvement with being. This is much deeper, because we may not be that involved with this life. We may be a bit sick and fed up with this life. We may think this life went a bit pear-shaped, not particularly, especially the way society is going just now. We may be looking for the ejector seat button. We may not be attached to this life, but deep inside, we still very, very, very much want to be. There are unfulfilled dreams. There is this expectation, sense of entitlement, a sense of lack of fulfillment, where there are still things we need to experience, need to do. We still want to manifest. We've got this urge inside to be. I've no idea how enlightened Shakespeare was, but that to be or not to be was a winner. That to be or not to be, 6 words, isn't it? It's a brilliant winner. So even if we're not involved with this life, prioritizing this life, our mind can't let go of ego because there's so much unfulfilled dreams inside us, worldly dreams. Maybe next time there'll be, well, whatever you dream of. And so there's those 2 obstacles. The third obstacle that got in the way of enlightenment was that we got involved with shamatha experience. And instead of using shamatha to free our mind to make it Buddha, we got involved with the beauty of just silence, feeling so harmonious, feeling blissful in our body, feeling complete in ourselves, but lacking compassion. It was all about well-being. Our Dharma practice was about me feeling good and me having insight, wisdom, whatever it is, but basically a lack of compassion because we were still wrapped up in our own well-being. Here it's not like the first 2 obstacles. It's not well-being holiday by the seaside. It's not coming in through the 5 senses, well-being. And it's not emotional and psychological, these deeper need to exist for the sake of companionship or whatever it is, deep psychological needs. It's not on that level. This is an involvement with meditation experience, which gives you a profound and peaceful and really quite pure comfort. Comfort. You know what beginners call, I had a good meditation? What they mean is, I felt really nice, and a niceness I've not felt before. So peaceful and balanced. So we got involved with that, or we couldn't get uninvolved with that. As we get older as Buddhists, then a good meditation session can be quite a raw one, because it exposes what needs to be exposed. But anyway, then the 4th obstacle is just we didn't know. We didn't know really what being a bodhisattva meant. We didn't have the complete kit, all the instructions, like we're getting a taste of now with Bodhisattva Generosity. So anyway, those 4 obstacles in the past stopped us. So we need to be very clear that we are developing generosity mainly as a way to give up our self-centered past, so that if our practice of generosity, because maybe now you've got good karma from a few lifetimes of being a bodhisattva, so you have wealth to share, you have knowledge to share. So if that makes us more of a someone, even a lama someone, even a Rinpoche someone, something's wrong. So we need to be very careful on obvious and subtle levels of how our generosity of being in the world, whereby we are given to everybody and we are able to give them something. Just like my job, the Dharma teacher, I can give you Dharma teachings. I might look like a bodhisattva to you or somebody on the bodhisattva path. But if this inside my mind is making me more solid in terms of ego, if it's more and more blocking up the way for me to let go of everything so that I can experience the Buddha mind that's always been my truth, then it's not bodhisattva generosity. Now, let's explore that a little bit more deeply. It's a difficult course to give this, because we can go deeper and deeper. It can get so subtle. But at the same time, we all need just to be more generous on a simple, everyday level as we go through our day and meet people and meet situations. There are endless opportunities to give more of ourselves and to give up. So I don't want it to be too subtle, but I do want to explore the subtle levels, because maybe something in there you've not thought about yet. So now let's go back and finish the technical points. Now I've made these few sort of reflections about generosity. I think last time we looked at the technicality of how generosity can be made great. So we're on page 1112 of your support document. And it needs to be great, even if it is a small act in other people's eyes. But that small act can be almost infinitely powerful. Almost infinitely powerful, if we apply Bodhisattva mind. So how to make it great, we saw last time, and maybe I think it was towards the end, so I probably rushed it, being me. So let's go back there quickly. 3 sorts of greatness. The first one is something can be great and all of the thesaurus of great, magnificent, wonderful, splendid, the best, all that. It can be great in the sense of the very, very, very best, the finest, the noblest, like the Stradivarius of generosity, rather than I don't know how cheaply you can get a violin. If you've got 4-year-olds learning the violin at school, and how cheaply you can get a violin, but probably for $40, $50. So in terms of quality, of what? Of your mind. When you are being generous, even a simple act of giving somebody a cup of coffee, your mind can be as pure as it can be, as noble as it can be. What is as noble as it can be? This is Buddha mind is present. No self. So no duality. This, what we've been trying to get rid of, the transaction, sense of entitlement and all this kind of thing. Me and you. I'm giving you something. You're lucky. You're lucky you've got me in your life. And so on. Any sense of me and you, duality or triplicity, me, you, an act of generosity. You're in a mind state which is informed by Buddha mind because of your meditation practice. And so even though on a relative level, there is the act of giving and the kindness and the whatever's happening in the other person in you, there is this equanimity, there is the serenity of Buddha mind, which is not at all entrapped in a projection of persona onto the other person. It's not trapped into an idea of me, the Bodhisattva, being generous, or acts of generosity which are karma generating and so on. None of those definitions entrap your mind. Instead, your mind is informed by your practice. We can only get that through meditation, but in that moment, Buddha's blessing is present. If you practice Vajrayana, your Guru's blessing is present. So even though there is you, on one level, the mind is in the serenity of Buddha. So that makes it great in the sense of purity. It's mainly dealing with the absolute nature of mind. The second thing which makes it great deals with the relative nature of mind, what's happening on a relative level, where you are giving somebody something, that's otherwise it's not generosity. And as I said last time, we can multiply the mind through the visualization of Samantabhadra, where I'm giving you a cup of coffee, but may I give all the things we think of, food to the hungry, shelter to the poor. May I give the Dharma teachings to those, may I give the Dharma teachings on all the levels. Beautiful, pure, kind, but big mind thoughts, thinking over many lifetimes, thinking of our journey to enlightenment, thinking of all the suffering in samsara, so that what we are giving is just materially, it's a cup of coffee, but what we're giving to that person, and then we are recognizing that person on a relative level as our former parent and best friend. We owe them so much in a way on that level. And then we're thinking of them as future bodhisattvas, future Buddhas. There's so much we can do in our relative mind. We learn that as we practice the bodhisattva path, that makes a simple action immense. There's no limit to how immense it can be on a relative level. And then we saw last time, the third thing is a dedication, whereby when it's finished, we let go completely and we dedicate it to enlightenment. We need over many years to learn how to do that better and better. We don't just say the words of sharing, of dedication, but we learn how to really move on, let go. That's finished. What happened? Can't even remember. 2 seconds ago. Now, the reason is we can spoil it. If we were so generous 30 years ago, but then 30 years later, we really regret we did it, then all the goodness, or much of the goodness we made then, can be lost. A moment of anger, resent, regret can seriously damage karma. So making whatever karma we generate in the moment through a big relative mind and a pure ultimate mind We need to make it last forever by dedicating it and then letting it go completely. We need to train in that. So those three greatnesses, when they are present, need to be there for that moment of generosity to be taking us to enlightenment. Then it becomes what bodhisattvas call the paramita. Only then. Otherwise, it's not the perfection of generosity. It's generosity, it's wonderful karma, it is helpful to a degree on your bodhisattva path, but it's not paramita. So we have to learn how to transcend duality. We have to learn the habit of the big mind in each moment, caring, prayerful mind, and dedication again and again. And then not only does the mind need to be immense, each moment we're learning, but to be pure. And we already saw one aspect of purity in the three greatnesses, but the purity in total, real best, excellent purity, comes from a perfect marriage of wisdom and compassion. And the compassion is our antidote to number 3 of our obstacles from the past, getting involved with meditation experience alone, our own inner spiritual well-being. Compassion keeps us out of, it's called one-sided nirvana, not Buddha's nirvana. And then the wisdom keeps us out of worldly rebirth. So compassion's a big topic. We develop that as much as we can. The wisdom here is defined as having 4 seals of authenticity. So just a moment. It's like having 4 stamps. When you travel in the East, in some countries, you need lots of papers and lots of stamps, and if you don't have all the stamps, then like the Indian police can take you into custody and give you a bit of trouble. One of my main Chinrezig teacher, Lama Chod, he said, the time I was in prison in India, because I didn't have papers, he said, it was wonderful. I had a whole retreat cell. They fed me every day. They left me alone. Said I could practice all day long. It was one of the best times of my life. I could get a lot of practice done. But he didn't have the papers or the stamps. So we need 4 seals on the action that make it wise. So wisdom here means shunyata, voidness. There needs to be the seal of shunyata on you physically, the giver, so that whatever projection we have of ourselves, whatever mind story we have of me the giver, me the kind person, me the Lama, me the Bodhisattva, but that the physical image of me in this life, all that mental slideshow you've got of you, the Bodhisattva, or you in general, through being in this piece of meat and being identified with it, we see the voidness of that. The voidness of that doesn't just mean, poof, it's gone. Like one of these old detonators, ego blown up. That's immature Buddhist understanding of voidness. Mature understanding of voidness is interdependence. You understand how that story of you developed over many lifetimes, over this lifetime. The reality of it the whole fabric of karma that made you uniquely. We understand because we understand it's impermanent. It doesn't stay the same for a second. It's interdependent. That's real shunyata on the you who's being generous story. And then your mind, the mind in this moment, devoid. Stamp number 2. The gift and all the value and projections we put onto the gift. I haven't got time to talk about that, but explore it. We think this is a bigger gift than that. I gave a lot, or I gave away. That was my best, whatever it was. My best coat, my best whatever you gave. We attach value. We're attached to the value. We attach to things. Stamp of voidness, we understand. Interdependence, impermanence, and so on. And then number 4 is not what you'd expect. If you might expect, number 4 must be the recipient, our projections onto the receiver. No, number 4 here is enlightenment. Whatever you think enlightenment is not. It's what you think enlightenment is. And that's very useful because if we don't have a notion of enlightenment, we're not going to be here in the first place. It's just you must realize your understanding of enlightenment will change immensely. And only when you break through into Buddha mind, a wonderful, wonderful moment, like Nagarjuna achieved and so on, when he reached first Bodhisattva level. But we are practicing generosity to achieve enlightenment. The very nature of enlightenment is shunyata. Don't ask me to explain that in 2 sentences, I can't. We've spent whole courses on it. But we need, at the time of giving, to know that we are giving for enlightenment, but that enlightenment isn't what we think it is. So, 4 seals, all in the same moment, because we're talking about the living moment of giving. So we need to train in this again and again and again until it becomes automatic. So that me, the story, this human life, me, my mind in this moment, that, what you're giving, and where it all ends up, enlightenment, Then, if those 4 real shunyatas are there, beautifully melded with compassion, that moment makes it paramita. You combine the greatness, 3 things, and the purity, compassion, wisdom as the 4 seals. We learn to make those present in a moment, and that moment will get you out of samsara, will help make you Buddha. Without those, or with less of those, then a lot of what you're doing will have wonderful worldly consequences, but it won't be liberating you dramatically. So now we need to move on. I wanted to mention something about the rejoicing, what we call rejoicing in virtue, which bodhisattvas do. It sounds like cheating until you understand the mind, but it's like this. Say, well, let's take a living example, Taisitupa, okay? Wonderful guru doing incredible things for Dharma and for lots of people on many, many levels, or Akon Rinpoche when he was alive. So it says, if we identify, this is the key word, identity, identify with somebody else's generosity, wait for it, we get the good karma results. We don't steal it from them. They get their good karma results. but we also get the results. We need to explore this, understand it, work with it, what it really means. Because you can't just say, as we do so often, I rejoice in the virtue created by all the Buddhas of the past and all the Buddhas at present now who are practicing generosity, and all the Buddhas in the future who are going to practice generosity. And not just that, all the Bodhisattvas in the past and the future, not just that, all of the arhats, and then not just that, all of the ordinary worldly people who nevertheless did wonderful things through their canon. I rejoice in the virtue of that. Of course, we do these prayers. They're a wonderful mind training, an opening up of the mind, an awareness of what's going on, what other people are managing to do. But the point is getting rid of ego. So we see so often in the Bodhisattva teachings, we let our mind become them, become that. All of whatever bodhisattvas are doing, so purely, so wisely, with all those seals and so on, right now. We feel part of that. That's what it's really about. That's the real me. That's the real identity. And the more we are gone into that, then the less self and self-centeredness there will be. So rejoicing in virtue goes very deep. Well, that's one thing I just wanted to mention. I wanted to mention the catalyzing power of the path. I've mentioned it in the past talks. But if you are committed to Dharma and you're practicing now, especially if you're in Vajrayana, and you set off on like the 4 foundations, 4 special foundations, then the presence in your life of Dharma practice, of commitment to Dharma practice, and then of your Dharma teacher, if you have a good Bodhisattva Dharma teacher, or your Guru, if you have a good Guru, the presence of any or all of those in your life will rearrange your karma. Your life will no longer be what it would have been had you not entered this Dharma stream. I've seen this vividly with astrology. I have mixed feelings about astrology, but I have done some Western astrology and also Tibetan astrology. I was astrologer for Samiling for many years in a simple way. I'm not that good, but anyway, sometimes I've seen astrology that really works. But sometimes when people start practicing Dharma, their astrology doesn't work anymore. Why? Because their karma has been rearranged. How does your Dharma practice or your Samaya connection with your Guru change your karma? It brings some things to the front, to the present, that might have been next life things, might have been held in a way which will challenge you so that you can really see what ego means. You can realize how strong, how clever, how deeply rooted, how unexpectedly, everything, because that is what we need to overcome. And then on the good side, of course, we learn to understand what bodhisattvas have achieved, are achieving, and Buddhas and so on. So anyway, the path will catalyze your experience. And when that is happening, generosity, giving of yourself, giving way, giving up in the sense of letting go, giving up the expectation, giving up the sense of entitlement. These are things which should be challenged. Now, one question that often comes up is kind of, okay, now I've signed up and I'm a card-carrying bodhisattva, and belong to the party and all. Do I have to give everything that's asked of me? No, it's a path. It's a path. We need, and often with our teacher's help, we need to find where the limits are. Generosity meaning giving up, letting go, accepting, all sorts of things. We need to do it within our capacity to handle it. Trying to do more than we can do will cause you to crash, will cause you to burn out, will cause you to start having very mixed and deep traumatic feelings with respect to the Dharma and your teachers and so on. It's no good. It's no good. So gung is English, so we say gung-ho in the English language. Gung-ho bodhisattvas who are warriors. Yeah, bodhisattva warriors. Well, it's a nice illusion. Anyway, so we don't need to give everything. We need to work with intelligence. We need to let go joyfully as much as we can this kind of pain, because it is an ancient habit that's challenged where we cling. We need space. We need identity of a certain sort. We need the joy of the pain of feeling how much we need it and being happy to let go. So that catalyzing power of the path, and especially if you have a wonderful teacher, a great bodhisattva in your life, like Taisutubha, we had Akon Rinpoche and so on, then it will be as strong as you let it be strong. So if there's a kind of a vow of where we kind of let in the potential, we need to let in as much as we can take. Now, I did say in this course we'd look at Vajrayana. So then in Vajrayana, what's different? In some ways, not a lot, because a Vajrayana person is a bodhisattva using special methods. Where we're going, the twofold benefit, what we're doing, using our practice in the bodhisattva way, that's the same. But we have special methods. Most of those methods are based around imagination. In our next course about Buddha nature, we'll be exploring, using the Karmapas text, imagination and its power and where it sits in the general scheme of things. So in many Buddhist paths, imagination is the enemy. This mind which, remembers the past, that's imagination. Past is gone. Whatever we have here as past in our mind is imagination. The future is imagination. Didn't happen yet. It's very real for us. Where? In our imagination. Only there. So imagination is very often the enemy. When we sit and do shamatha, the mind has to be just with the breath, just with the candle flame, with its object. Imagination is a distraction. So in many levels of Buddhism, imagination's not got a very good reputation. In Vajrayana, we realize the power of it. And this power that's kept us in samsara for so long, we can turn it around and it can become our really good friend, it's like, what's it called? Aikido. Aikido. You know, these Aikido masters. I think some of the films I've seen on YouTube are fixed. But anyway, usually with Steven Seagal. But anyway, because he's a very big guy. Okay. Ken's stories about his own involvement with Steven Seagal, leave those for another time. But anyway, he's a very big guy. And so you see this thing where he gets kind of attacked from all sides, and he goes like this, and that one's on the floor, and that one's flying through the air. He's just standing there using minimum effort, but using the opponent's momentum. They're coming at you. They've charged up their whole system. There's all that energy. If you can redirect it, they're finished. So we have huge imagination, dynamo power. Some people say they can't visualize, and I know they can't create images very well, but everybody imagines. Most of the time we're imagining. We're there in our imagination. So we can use that and use it very skillfully. So each practice has its own way how we do it. And in particular, when we do a sadhana, to Chinrezig or Tara or something, there is a stage called offerings. And if we use the imagination correctly, then, so when I do this, I'm looking at the clock that's over there, right? To see if I've got time to tell a story, and I don't. So anyway, we're using our imagination wonderfully. But the thing is, you need to really do it. We're not just sitting there really thinking about something else, and somewhere we're doing a bit of Buddhist practice. Here come the flowers and the incense, offering goddesses and that. But how can you say? The main hub of your presence, your attention, is not really gone. We should imagine it. Wow. I forget Ken down there on the meditation cushion. You're there, you're 1,000 offering gods and goddesses, and they just move through space so beautifully, and they've got these amazing containers made by the gods, and inside them, the incense, the perfumes, they smell like nobody on earth has ever smelled, and they're giving those with such devotion, because the Buddha's there. You're right there in front of the Buddha. The Buddha's hundreds of kilometers huge, and the whole presence of the healing power of medicine Buddha. And you are not just one, but 1,000, 10,000. And what you're giving, you're completely gone in that. So when you come back down from your practice, how can you be attached to your rusty old bicycle in the garden? You've just given the greatest wonders of the universe, really meaningfully, for such a good purpose. When we come back and we realize how involved we are with not just stuff, status, relationships with this person, being seen good, seen bad, all that stuff. So we use the imagination, and offerings are the place where we train in one very, very vital area. But we need to learn how to do it in the true Vajrayana way. Now, in particular, when we do the four special foundations, then we do the refuge and prostrations, we do the Bodhisattva purifications. Then there's mandala offering practice. It's the same there, what I just described. For some people, it's 111,000 times you say the prayer. You have your mandala plate, you have your little piles of rice, and you think, through doing this, what am I doing? Preparing myself for Mahamudra. fine. But it's only really going to work if you understand what's going on. What's going on? Letting go. Mandala offering. Offering is letting go, right? Letting go is going on. Why is there letting go? Because we're clinging. We have a habit of clinging and of valuing things and so on in a worldly way. Letting go, and especially when it comes to not things, status, how other people see you, project onto you. Letting go stuff inside the whole web of family complications. Letting go on all levels. It has to be painful, otherwise it's not letting go. You're dealing with ancient habits of letting go and these big obstacles, involvement with this life, involvement with the need to be. That pain at first becomes a joy because you know where all this is taking you. Back home to our natural state of Buddha. There is nothing more joyful than that. So the mandala offering is our time of joy. Prostrations, Vajrasattva purifications can be quite challenging, very difficult, because we are really sleeves rolled up dealing with our karmic baggage. Mandala offerings is a time of joy, but it only works if, as I just described, you really go into it. And there was something quite interesting, because when we do the foundations, we do the 37 traditional offerings that came from India. And when you look into them, we don't have time today, but you've got this precious horse, stallion. Now, anyway, in India at the time, a horse is your fastest transport. You can't go anywhere more quickly than on a horse in those days. The horse is the best. We value traveling, going somewhere efficiently and quickly. So we offer horses, but not just any old horse. This is a divine horse, best horse in the world, and so on. So very early on, it was in the 70s, Akon Rinpoche asked one of his art students to make him a modern 37-point mandala. So then, what's the fastest way you can go somewhere these days? So he wanted a mandala with like Rolls Royce and Porsche cars and helicopters, private jets, and the modern equivalents, because the whole point is this, if I can sum it up, which I shouldn't really do, it's too sacred, but in a few seconds. What you're thinking when you do mandala offering is, even if I had the finest things in the world. So what do we want? And many people want a companion, a partner. So we offer when it's in the mandala, it was the precious queen. And this is for monks, and they were men, and so whatever the sexuality, the idea of a partner. So you make the most wonderful partner for you could ever imagine. Everything you could ever dream of, wrapped up in that one perfect body. And then what do? You offer. You're saying, even if I had this, I wouldn't have a second's hesitation in offering this for the blessing of Mahamudra from my Guru. If I had the most wonderful palaces, the most incredible objects, the most high-tech, wonderful things, or low-tech, if I had the most beautiful landscapes all around me in nature, whatever it is, the very best that you could ever dream of, then we'd say, in one instant, I offer this. So we're not just doing piles of rice and going, of course we do that. But as we're doing it, we do a whole session and we go around the 37 points. And each one of them, just make it so magnificent and then learn to let go. And let go again and again and again. That should make it easier to surrender in this life. Now, when we do mandala offering, we are mainly doing it with material offerings, imagined, using our imagination. But then there is what's called the inner offering, which is our own body. So the Chod practice comes along with mandala offering when we're doing the foundations. And in Chod, there we get, if I can just say a few words about it, the main quality of Vajrayana, which is to learn to live in the moment. There is nothing else. Past has gone, future's not happened. There's only this moment. This moment is Buddha. So we start a session of practice. We say, in this session, on this cushion, in this moment, I achieve enlightenment. So instantly we become Vajrayogini. That's Buddha, manifestation of Buddha. And our relative self is down there somewhere, and we offer our body, chop it up, offer it, anybody who wants it. There's some real meat eaters out there in the universe, and they just love to gobble you up. So we say, here, come, yeah, I know, you love this, here, have a liver. My liver, it's yours. Have a heart. Skull, yeah, sure, like this. But we boil it all up with mantra, with wise mind, so that what they receive brings satisfaction. Our whole physical existence becomes, through the power of practice, something that satiates, brings peace, brings dharma, settles our karmic debts with those we have karmic debts with, feeds something into the fabric of reality and interdependence that will help the poor and help people, help the poor and needy and so on. It does many, many things. So Chod practice is the ultimate offering, except I didn't quite finish the explanation. Also what we offer is not just stuff, the very best stuff, and not just stuff, I mean partners, people, but our own body. But we also offer our own realization, meditation experience, fixed ideas. We go deeper and deeper into what we cling to that keeps us in the prison of samsara. And we let go, we offer. Wherever there is clinging, however deep it goes, we let go and we offer. So that's the Chod practice. And then in Vajrayana, all of Vajrayana depends on one thing, it's the Guru. You and your relationship with the Guru, and surrender is an incredibly profound topic, and it can present itself in all sorts of ways. So this is why we read the hagiographies, the biographies of great masters, because very often we see in each of their cases how the presence of Dharma and the presence of the Guru in that person's life challenged their weak point. Like with Mapa, it was his family inheritance. His son, he loved his son so much. He trained his son in Dharma since birth. He was a very liberated mind, but something in there treasured his son so much. And what he didn't know, through the whole programming of everything, was that his son was going to have an accident and die. And so his guru foretold this to him, and he cracked up for a year. This great master who'd already done so much lost it for almost a year. Needed his guru, all of his Dharma brothers and sisters, very tightly around him to help him get back on his feet. So dosing it according to our own situation. We're not Mapa yet, not quite yet, but we need to expect challenges, and somehow it rings a bell. When we get deeper into practice, we hit the ancient walls. We got this far, so far in the past, we got this far. But this is really our long-term obstacle on the path, or one of them. Here we go. Are we going to back off? Leave it to come back another time? Or are we going to surrender in a very deep sense, so we can become Buddha, free to help everybody? So I think that's all I can say. There's so much. The reason I mentioned before we started, when we were just chatting, these Buddhas of the past, one of them became Buddha mainly through the practice of generosity. Now this means hundreds of lifetimes of understanding and practicing generosity. So I've just given a couple of hours of talk. I hope it's nowhere near what generosity is really about, but I hope it's some help. And let's dedicate anything that was good and helpful and meaningful. Let's dedicate it in this, as we've learned, like putting a drop of water in the ocean. We dedicate it to our own enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And in particular, our karma is to be born in this world, this increasingly, horribly materialistic world. And that is dedicated so that the goodness of learning about generosity, kindness to our fellow beings, we go back to the definition, giving what is meaningful whenever we can. Let's hope this percolates through, and that the mind of this world will be graced by the blessing of Chinrazik and kindness towards everyone. Sonam diye tamche zikpane, topnenye pedranam pamchene, je ganachi palap trukpaye, sipe sole drowa resho. Janchob semcho rinpoche, maje panam je jochik, jepa nyampa me padam, kongne kongdo apelwaresho. So thank you all very much. And now it's, well, I welcome any comments you have or any questions.
Thank you, Ken. I have a brief question. I can sort of see a bit of a dilemma. I just wonder what your thoughts were, because when we look around us, we can see different levels of samsaric activity, different circumstances, different situations of our lives, that will challenge us to varying degrees. And we have choices over that. I can go in one direction or I can go in another, on big things and little things. I hope it doesn't sound like a too obvious question, but I wondered what's the guidance? Because I can sit myself in a situation of challenge and say, okay, here's the challenge, here's the wall, let's work with it. Or I could go somewhere else where it's a sort of a lighter level of challenge. If you do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I know we shouldn't go and sit in a
I see what you mean. I see what you mean. The problem is, well, not the problem, but how much access does one have to a bodhisattva teacher or not? I think this is the question, because if you're not sure yourself, then you can go and talk about something with a teacher, and maybe not so much to get an answer, but as to give you the tools so that you find your own answer and you make a wise decision for yourself. I think, trying to sum up everything that I've learned about this and that Dharmas have said, it's a terrible answer I'm going to give you, is do your best. But it really is the only answer, because what we are learning is to be responsible for ourselves. And that topic in itself is a big one. By whose values, by which standards, which criteria are we going to live our lives? And what other people think, or it all goes very deep. And it takes us into Bodhisattva diligence, mainly, where we explore that. But given all you know, and given the fact that each of us, must become responsible for ourselves, take responsibility for our own actions and our karma, then we do our best. And then adjust as we go along. Because we don't just decide once and forever. Sometimes we make an option, we make a career choice, we make a personal choice, we make a romantic choice, we make a dharma choice even, whatever it is. Sometimes we realize we hadn't made the best of choices, and then we can readjust. So we do our best at each moment. If I am teaching you as a bodhisattva, then, how can you say, as a hardline teacher, right? And assuming that you've really signed up for the bodhisattva way, and in particular, if we're technical, if you've taken the bodhisattva aspiration vow and the practice vow, and if I'm a hard and difficult teacher, then I have to tell you that you don't belong to yourself anymore. You belong to everybody. So look at this jumble of stuff that you are. This body, this mind, this life, these circumstances, everything that you have and you are and you've been gifted. And think, how can I use this best for everybody? Because I don't belong to me anymore. I belong to them. I remember Hakon Rinpoche telling me he was taken from his home to the monastery from his parents when he was not quite 5 years old. And he said, from the very beginning, my teachers told me, you don't belong to your family anymore, that's finished. You belong to everybody. We bought you from your parents, because they give the parents an indemnity. Now, by our modern politically correct standards, that's taking young children and buying them and brainwashing them from that. It doesn't work. But nevertheless, I'm telling you this because that's what he heard from the start, and that's what he believed, and that's how he lived his life. But he was a tulku. He was a reincarnation of Kamamio, who was an incredibly amazing spiritual being. So they rescued him from lots of things, his teachers, and told him that. So for a tulku, that would be the criterion. For somebody who's starting out on the Bodhisattva path, maybe they've taken only the aspiration vow, not the practice vow, then you have to do your best. But there will come a point where you have signed up. And once you have signed up, really and truly signed up, then it's uncompromising. And this is where the real generosity of the Bodhisattva comes in, because you are going to have to let go of things that are painful to let go of. How much can we do that? We have to really put in the scales ourselves. And like you say, you can lead a life that's challenging, very challenging. Oh my gosh. Oh, that much challenging. Or sometimes, much less challenging. The whole point is that you don't burn out, break up. You don't make a conflicting, traumatic psychology in respect to Dharma, so that it's hard for you to come to Dharma in the future, because you'll have a trauma of having tried to achieve something you couldn't do. That's very, very realistic advice. So people who've tried too hard to be bodhisattvas and who've crashed, then lamas handle them so kindly, so carefully, and you do a little bit. You do what you can manage, because you need to get back on your feet. So sorry, I've waffled on a lot. I walk around the topic, but I think there is good information.
Thank you, Ken. Very helpful.
Thank you.
And I have a question about the Vajrayana way of giving, about how would one, like just a normal human being like me, be able to give with the idea of emptiness or voidness in mind?
Yeah, it's the same as you do your best. So we learn about it, and at first we fake it in a nice way. Like we know whatever the words have said, that we know, we may have understood or appreciated the words that really and truly there's no giver and receiver in the solid way they seem to us at first. We know that it's more subtle than that. These are all aspects of our mind, of our mental activity. Whatever we know, we apply it. It can't be the shunyata, the emptiness of an awakened mind. But how did an awakened mind get awakened? Is by first learning about shunyata, then thinking about it, exploring it, and bit by bit becoming familiar with the truth of it. And then realizing really and truly what it's saying, what these words like emptiness and so on really and truly mean, not what they seem to mean at first. So we do our best, and in a prayerful way, praying that in the future we can really be in this state beyond duality, beyond triplicity, even though in other people's eyes we are somebody giving something to somebody. We do our best. But that will vary from each person, depending on what they've learned in terms of study, and also on what they've experienced through their own meditation practice, life practice.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And
Yes, hello, Isabel. Yeah.
hi, sorry. Could we look at the situation about organ donation?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for reminding me. Yeah, so it's a reflection. It's a reflection from, mainly I heard from Akon Rinpoche, but it will come from other Namas too. It's not guidance yet, because organ donation is a very new thing. They didn't have it in Tibet. There's no sutra about organ donation. In the teachings on generosity, we can read about it, but we kind of wonder as well. It says, in the past, bodhisattvas have given an eye so that somebody could see. And you think, well, how on earth did they do that? What kind of surgery or ways of connecting up nerves did they have? There are stories, so goodness knows. But the reflection is this. Of course, it's good to give. And in a way, once you're dead, it costs you nothing, because that body is no use to you anymore. You're not going to be in it, using it. So it's just amazing that other people can have organs of various sorts. So it's, on the face of it, it will be a very meaningful act of generosity to have one's organs donated after you die. But then when we get into the teachings about what happens at death, what happens after death, and in the beginning of the Bardo, then we know that very often the mind, which is now, after whatever it is, up to 3 days, has actually left the body. It's still in, for some time, able to witness the place, the people that were familiar in the last life. And very often that mind doesn't know it's dead. It's confused. Can't understand why you're talking to people and they can't hear you, they don't see you. And the person you live with, your partner, the children. And then when it comes to the body, usually why they're burning it if it's being cremated. And the mind can be very confused, and it can get angry. And that anger, that confusion, can be not helpful in the in-between life process and in that journey through in-between life experiences. So all that Akon Rinpoche was saying is, you need to take this into account. There will be a benefit for somebody else materially through the organs. You can be giving years of life to somebody through those organs. But then if your mind is not ready for it, there could be a lot of damage to your own ongoing journey. So there's no guidance. It's just saying, be aware of this. He was saying, if you want to give your organs, then if you want to make a balanced decision, a wise decision, take that into account. So the obvious answer is, then if you do think it would be beneficial, Katia, my wife, she had a corneal transplant from a dead person killed in an accident in 1980, whatever it was, 2 or 3. And she's been able to see with that eye ever since. It's amazing. It's amazing. So the obvious thing to do is to train, to practice again and again. Visualize how it is. There you are. There's somebody. You've been in the hospital, the body's there. They're cutting bits of you out. That body. So, and then to feel generous, to feel so happy. This is helping somebody. This piece of worthless meat that's going to rot is going to bring life to somebody. It's going to bring sight to somebody. So if we train in that again and again, so it becomes a reflex, then that solves the problem. And of course, the Chuk practice I was talking about earlier on, we do just that. And we get to really enjoy it. It's like you enjoy cooking. You put the apron on, you've got your wooden spoons, and there you are in the kitchen, and you're happily knocking up a wonderful curry or something. So there we are. We zoom out of our body, and there's Ken's body down there, and we prepare it for the most wonderful feast, benefiting. So much benefit, makes us so happy. So if we do that, and you'll know it's working in life, Chod practice, because it should be changing the way you are relating to the daily details, your interactions with people, and so on. You feel different. So I think if one does that, if one wants to give organs, then just prepare your mind for the reality of that after you're dead. I don't think there's more to say than that. After it's a personal choice. Chris, yes.
Ken, it was just a quick to follow that, really, because I remember you've mentioned Chod practice before, and for various reasons, I wasn't able to follow up on it very much. What little I did find out, I decided that I'd stop inquiring at that point until, because I felt it was a very powerful practice and needs proper guidance. But if that's something we wanted to pursue, what would be your advice on how to go about it in the absence of a dedicated teacher?
In the absence of a dedicated teacher, then you can't do. Yep. If you don't get the transmission and the permission and the instructions, you can't do it. But what we can do is the mirror practice just for organ donation. Mm-hmm. We can rehearse it again and again and get that little thrill, Yeah. Oh, wow, my heart, which is useless to me, I mean, dead, is going to carry on living inside somebody else and give them life. Woo! That feeling, not, oh my God, they're cutting me up. Rehearse that again and again. Mm. Sure, is a powerful Vajrayana practice. You need all the right things in place. You need to be ready yourself as well. It's not a beginner's practice. In the foundations, we do it after the prostrations, refuge, Bodhisattva purification. Then it comes into its own.
Thank you.
Right. You're welcome.
Ken, it's Kim. Could I just ask one thing about the when you were saying about all the body and everything and at the time of death? I got this card in with the Sammy Ling pack for at the time of death, and it actually mentions, like, when you die, about that the body should be undisturbed for 4 hours. And now apparently they can't take organs because they need to take them straight away. And I was told that if you leave it for 4 hours, then they can't take them. So I felt really sort of conflicted. Well, so if the 4 hours isn't really necessary, then if you're thinking in those terms of offering, and doing the Chod practice, the thought of giving your body.
Yeah, I think
that got me confused. Was this 4? It's like it's just this 4 hour thing, really.
It's all of that's ideal in terms of you, the person, and it comes from teachings already modified for modern circumstances, because when people die these days, it's not like somebody dying in their own bed, in their own house, in a Tibetan village, where everybody's clued up about Dharma and they're going to try and do the right thing. These days, you die in ambulances, emergency rooms, hospital wards, and so on. So it's already modified, but that leaving for 4 hours at least. I think the reason they must say 4 hours is not to do with your mind, because that's quite quick for one's own mind to leave the body. it's to give time for someone to be contacted to help you. And if somebody has a lama, we ask lamas to do poa, or ask lamas to do, to just come and through their connection help liberate your mind. So that I should imagine it's for that, because in what happens when you are clinically dead, according to the teachings, is that there can be any period of time up to 3.5 days before you come out of a total blackout that happens at clinical death. For Buddhist death is when you go into total blackout. Then there can be up to 3.5 days before your mind wakes and leaves the body. And then it's in that time, after leaving the body, that you can, you've got an astral body, you're no longer body limited, so you can go wherever your mind wants. But you are naturally drawn, usually, to your previous circumstances. So I should imagine if they've said 4 hours at Samiling, this was done after my time, I think, it's to give time for the prayers or the poa to be done by your teacher. In which case, if that's been successfully done, you're gone. I mean, you're up there with the Bodhisattvas and the Buddhas, and you are literally taken away. And the body is just a show to be used. So I'd recommend, as I've been saying for the previous 2 questions, if you can really practice again and again, joyfully giving your organs, then maybe you can cross that bit out about the 4 hours, and your body can be very helpful to somebody.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Ken.
It's like I say, there's nothing definite here. This is a new circumstance. It would be great if these, like Karmapa, Dalai Lama, Shakyamuni, and all the others, they got together and had a organ donation conference and came up with some, really trustworthy guidelines. It hasn't happened yet. Okay, I think that's us. So we've already done the dedication, and next week, many of us will see each other again. We start our 9 sessions on Buddha nature. So those of you who just came for the generosity, thank you very much, and wishing you well over the coming months and years or whatever till we see each other again. And for those of you who are the regulars, see you next week probably. Okay, bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ken.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao now. Ciao.
Thank you, thank you everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Love to.
Thank you.
Oh, it didn't end.